Morning. That was a terrific panel. What I thought I would talk to you a little bit about this morning is what artificial intelligence is all about in marketing. If we could switch over to this screen, that'd be great. Terrific. I'm the CEO of ViralGains. We're in the video space and using AI for optimizing video. I'm going to talk about what the heck AI is, why you're hearing so much about AI, why a lot of what you're hearing is, to be kind about it, BS, and how to sort of sort it all out. And I'm hoping by the end of a brief talk here, you'll have some tools. You'll have a little bit of a BS detector to detect what you're hearing in AI, and we'll have a little bit of fun. So I'm going to talk about the 5 things I put on the screen there. The first one is what is AI, machine learning, and deep learning. We'll talk a little bit about Pulp Fiction. We'll touch on robots and the impact of artificial intelligence technologies from robots. We'll talk about who should sit down at your family dinner. And finally, I'm going to leave you with a little bit of a BS detector around AI. I thought I would give you a little bit of background first on myself. Ciaran and I will chat at the end here with a little bit of a fireside chat. But I think you ought to understand who's talking to you and what my background is. So I'm the CEO of ViralGains. I'm also the entrepreneur in residence at MIT, and I'm expert on machine learning and artificial intelligence. I started in life as a roboticist as a kid. I built a computer-controlled robot when I was 15. That robot took off in the press and media. I got asked to write a book. I wrote a book called How to Build a Computer-Controlled Robot when I was 16. The book sold 20,000 copies, somehow ended up being a trade bestseller, and I found myself on the speaking circuit in high school talking about artificial intelligence and robotics. Needless to say, I wasn't very popular with the girls in high school, but later in life it proved to be helpful. I went on from there to write 7 books, or contribute to 7 books in the area of artificial intelligence, ranging from artificial intelligence technology to impact on things like capital markets, and the most recent of which I participated in a book called The Second Machine Age by Brynjolfsson and McAfee, which if you haven't read it, is a terrific book about the impact of automation, artificial intelligence, and robotics on jobs and some of the things going on in our society as a result of that. I taught courses on machine learning, deep learning, and artificial intelligence at MIT and Harvard for about 8 years. So I have a bit of a background in this area. My day job is I'm a CEO, and every company I've ever run has used machine learning in some way to disrupt an industry. So I spent 3 years at MIT looking at the impact of artificial intelligence on the media business, and found a business that fundamentally needed to be disrupted. A business that fundamentally was buying and selling the wrong things, where the disconnect between what advertisers wanted, which is genuinely engaged consumers who are considering purchasing a product and who can be measured as to whether or not they purchased the product, and media sold on 2-second views with the sound off with half the pixels in view, fundamentally disconnected. A couple of the companies I've been involved with as president or CEO, I was president of a company called iRobot, which probably isn't surprising given the early background from high school, which I took up to about $1 billion in market cap. It's now up to about 2.6. I was CEO and founder of a company called PeopleFluent that's now about a $200 million company using artificial intelligence for optimizing people within an enterprise. And now I'm running ViralGains, which helps advertisers use artificial intelligence for optimizing video and taking people on a path to purchase. So my areas of expertise, while I'm an outsider to the digital media space, my areas of expertise are using artificial intelligence in a way that's disruptive to different industries. You're probably hearing a lot of this from vendors. Our proprietary machine learning platform will, let's say, slice bread. And there's a big difference between what you're hearing and what may actually be going on underneath the covers. So what I thought I would do this morning is give you some tools for separating out the marketing hype, which now everyone apparently does artificial intelligence and machine learning and maybe deep learning. And what's actually going on below the covers is often things like simple linear regressions that they're calling artificial intelligence. There's a big gap, which seems not uncommon in the marketing and advertising space, between a term that we've collectively adopted and what people are actually doing. We also have all heard kind of the hype around AI. You know, we've all heard of this Watson program that IBM developed that actually defeated the champions in Jeopardy. Those are 2 of the top champions in Jeopardy. The fellow on the left, Ken Jennings, was the highest winning money winner in the history of the Jeopardy game. IBM's Watson destroyed the champion. And in fact, if you look at this scatter plot, What you're looking at on this chart is the percentage of questions answered by a particular Jeopardy champion. On the vertical axis is the accuracy of that particular champion. And the scatter plot of dots is all of the top Jeopardy champions over the years. Well, when IBM developed Watson over a period of years, this is the algorithm and how much better it got with each iteration. So as IBM, the consulting firm, took a variety of AI technologies and applied it against this narrow problem of understanding Jeopardy questions and finding answers through public sources, they got better and better and better at doing it. So we hear all these things about AI, and we even watch Ken Jennings when he was defeated by the machine in this very dramatic John Henry-like moment, write on his final Jeopardy answer, "I, for one, welcome our new computer overlords." So this stuff feels scary. You hear a lot about it, and you hear a lot of hype. And there are real things going on with artificial intelligence. This is from the Second Machine Age book. What you're looking at here is labor productivity, which has continued to soar, particularly since the advent of information technology. Real GDP per capita, which despite the recession has continued to go up to record rates. But look at the two below it. Private employment has flattened out, and median family income is actually going down. So there's this massive gap between the productivity of labor and wages, and this is brought about predominantly by automation, artificial intelligence, robotics. There's other factors, there's globalization, there's wage competition, but the primary factor driving this is automation. So we're in a world where people are scared of this. That, over time, will we be replaced by machines? What are these machines going to do? What happens when programmatic buying is all done by machines? Does that mean you don't need a media agency? This is the environment into which we all step. Well, I'm here to tell you that AI is simple, not scary. That a lot of the hype you hear and people worrying about machines becoming sentient have been around, frankly, not just for decades, but for centuries. In fact, at the turn of the last century, 1899 to 1900, people were worried that the phone system was going to wake up, that the networks that we were building for the electric grid were going to wake up and become sentient. So these worries about computerization, electric grid, phone system, computers becoming sentient have been around for a long time. What AI is good at is a bunch of fairly simple problems. It's good at learning and finding patterns, looking at data and finding patterns in that data. It works particularly well when a problem is narrow but deep, not broad but shallow. So AI works if you can find a problem that's very well defined, where the objective is clear, when you're clear about what you want, and when you can optimize against that one thing. It works badly if you're trying to optimize to a variety of goals and changing them all the time. And finally, the goal must be consistent and crystal clear to work well. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the jargon. You'll hear lots of terms thrown around. I saw one of the tweets that went by in the last talk saying, boy, this seems to be buzzword soup. I think one of the things we all are in danger of is using way too many words and buzzwords. Don't worry whether someone's calling it deep learning, machine learning, artificial intelligence, neural nets, genetic algorithms. The bottom line is there are a variety of technologies that can be used to find nonlinear relationships between data. A lot of them have been around since the 1950s. And the big change has happened in two things. Computers are much faster, and we've gotten a little bit smarter about how to layer them together. So artificial intelligence, variety of technologies, machine learning is a subset of that has to do with making choices using technologies like neural nets. And deep learning is really layering on layers of technology, multiple layers of neural nets, things like recurrent neural nets, that begin to derive smarter conclusions. But this stuff is not that complicated and not that scary. It reminds me of the last kind of hype machine that was picked up by advertising and marketing technology. Can anyone tell me what this film is? Pulp Fiction. Oh, terrific. Pulp Fiction. Well, there's a scene in Pulp Fiction where Sam Jackson's character is questioning someone about what his boss, Marcellus Wallace, looks like. And it's a very aggressive scene. The last time a term got picked up by ad tech and used everywhere was the term big data. You look around and everybody seemed to have big data. My data's bigger than your data. I've got terabytes of big data. No, I have megaflops of big data. And the reality was, I judged the data science competition at MIT. The term we use at MIT for big data is actually the opposite of what everyone was touting. It's nanodata. What really matters is the smallest bits of data that have insight that actually move the needle on something that matters, not having simply more and more and more data. So I start to feel about artificial intelligence the way I felt about big data and the way it was used in advertising and marketing. And this is the way I felt. Just say big data one more time. You heard it so much, and I'm getting to that same place with artificial intelligence now, where people are just using it and it's slapped on as a marketing moniker for linear regressions, for very simple algorithms, for decision trees. A lot of it is hooey and hype. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a bullshit detector to get through the hooey, and then Ciaran and I will talk a little further about that. So, you know, robotics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning do some pretty impressive things. But don't forget, these things take an awful lot of experimentation to get right. And you know, we don't really have to worry anytime soon that the robots are coming for all of our jobs. You know, what works best really is some combination of AI or machine learning and humans. We call it ManMachine Intelligence. There's things we as humans do a lot better than the machines and will for a very long time. And there are things that the machines do a lot better than us, which is finding data in a sea of irrelevant junk. I was searching for the right London-based analogy, and I forgot to ask Ciaran about the stadium and the football team I should cite, so I'm going to have to use my Boston version. I could have so much data on everything I needed to know about Boston. And if the question is, can I find a parking spot in Kenmore Square? But I'm missing one piece of data. I bet Michael can tell me what that one piece of data is. What's the one piece of data that will determine whether or not I can find a parking spot in Kenmore Square?
Time of day.
Even more precisely, if I'm missing this data, I won't get it. Any other Bostonians here? Whether the Red Sox are playing. So you can have terabytes of data. You can have bigger data than the next guy. But if you're missing the one piece of information, that the schedule of the sports team whose stadium is in that neighborhood, it doesn't matter how big your data is or how artificial your intelligence is. What matters is, do you have something that's different, that's real, that provides insight, and have you optimized toward the objective you're trying to reach? So you know, I was at this company, iRobot, for a number of years, growing the company, adding divisions, and growing the market cap. We sold 3 million robots a year. We've sold almost 30 million robots now. We thought we were selling a pretty good robot vacuum cleaner. It turns out, if you go onto YouTube and look at what people use the robots for, we were selling something very different. We were apparently selling some form of cat transportation. So you can see this video. It's been viewed 30 million times. It's called, not surprisingly, it's called Cat in Shark Costume Chases Duck While Riding on Roomba. And the interesting thing about this video is it also opened my mind to the impact of digital media. We spent $10 million at iRobot on a traditional television advertising campaign trying to raise our brand preference and brand awareness, aided and unaided brand awareness in North America, because sales were flat. It worked. Sales went up. But when we found out that the reason that sales had gone up, it had very little to do with our $10 million spent on television, and very much to do with videos like this that people were spontaneously posting because they had brand love for our robot. And that's caused a move in thinking about digital and going online, and a really sea change for how we thought about the business. So I'm going to give you 3 questions to think about as you think about the use of AI, and I'm going to leave you with the AI BS detector that I promised. So the first question is this one: what are you optimizing towards? The truth is that if you're going to use any kind of machine learning, you have to make sure that the data you're getting reflects what you're trying to optimize towards. I was struck by the last panel when a gentleman from Shell was talking about optimizing toward actually driving foot traffic, footfalls, consideration, sales. Those are the things that matter. Those sound like sales, not marketing. But in fact, marketing is starting to become sales. And if you're going to get data that actually drives meaningful brand results, you have to make sure your media spending is driving things that will give you data that's about brand results. Let me run a little experiment. How many of you have heard of the IAB? All right, perfect. Anyone know what the IAB standard is for what should count as a video view? Fire away.
2 consecutive seconds.
2 consecutive seconds, 50% visible with the sound off. So, advertisers, Shell, we're trying to drive engagement, we're trying to drive footfall traffic, we're trying to drive brand consideration. Let's check it out. Here we are in Good Housekeeping magazine. There's the ad. You ready? There we go. Okay, now look away from the screen, look at me. That was 2 seconds, sound off, 50% of the pixels in view. What car is that? Just the manufacturer. No more looking. You know, your 2 seconds are up. You got to look at me. What car was that? What car manufacturer? Audi? Somebody else? Just throw out a guess. Car brand? McLaren. Say again? McLaren. Nice. Any others? Say again? Chrysler. Oh, Chrysler. Thank you. No car. All right. So I've heard Chrysler. I've heard McLaren. Some people say Dodge. Turns out that car is a vacuum cleaner. So if you're buying video advertising and you're getting 2 second, half the pixels in view, sound off, scroll by autoplay views, you're getting bullshit. You're not getting something that drives any impact. And if you're buying video on the basis of impressions and not engagement and consideration, you're wasting your money. You might as well buy display ads or light your money on fire in the middle of Cincinnati, if we can cite one particular brand who tends to buy that way. So for video, the real goals for AI should be engagement, consideration, and purchase, not impressions. And if you're not doing that, you're not getting data about engagement that you can feed into a legitimate machine learning algorithm to figure out what makes people engage. So it starts with what you're buying. All right, clarity and consistency of goals is incredibly important for any machine learning platform. What is it you're trying to achieve? And if your goal is foot traffic, then measure and optimize your media for foot traffic, not clicks or views or something else. I'm going to skip over this slide because there's a lot in it, but I'm just going to talk about the 3 layers of what we see going on in the market. There's the inventory layer that's been traditionally where this all started, and the inventory layer is characterized by, let's see if this works. Is characterized by publishers, ad networks that essentially work for publishers to sell their inventory, and some publishers who have gotten large enough that they can actually lock up their data and say, come play in our sandbox. You can get in, but you can't get out. It's kind of like the Roach Motel of publishing. You can put your data in, but you can't get your data back out, and that's Facebook and YouTube specifically in video. The data layer, and I'm listing the data players, some of them before they were acquired, these have all been bought by now, allows you to sort of punch through the publication directly to the individual. And that data layer and ability to market to the individual and not simply the publication is what enables an engagement layer, which is where AI can be most useful. And essentially, what I would ask yourself is, what is the most valuable data as an advertiser that you have that you can leverage? Because that's the data that you can uniquely use to power your machine learning and AI. Is it about viewership? Is it about what people do offline? Is it the dwell time they spend on your web page? Once that data is in what's called a data lake, you can merge it in with the data you can get from third parties and drive results that others will not be able to get. All right, so the second question, because I want to be sensitive to the time here, do you know your context? So first question we covered. The second, do you know your context? Context matters a lot. So do intrusive ads that pop into your most personal context when you're talking with your friends and your family, does that tend to engage people? Let's use an example here. It's a company that has an F in their logo, and here you are sitting at dinner with a group of friends. You're talking about your family, and all of a sudden Tony the Tiger shows up and says, hey, how'd you like to buy some Frosted Flakes? Now, does that feel like a place where you're going to engage with the ad, or a place where you're going to scroll by an ad for 2 seconds with the sound off with half the pixels in view? There's a linkage between the standards set by the industry bodies, who represent, after all, the vendors, not the buyers, and the types of inventory that people are selling in the first generation environments for video. The other issue that people are having that makes it difficult to do good machine learning is brand safety. What is your ad running next to or against? These are 3 actual examples from YouTube. This is, on the right, we've got Resolve running on my first acid LSD trip with Dr. Ross Kay. We've got Geico in the middle running as pre-roll to How to Have Sex in the Office and Not Get Caught. And we've got 10 failed terrorist attacks and somebody running a recipe for stir-fried chicken and walnuts. So remember, context matters. The place where your ad is showing up and what it's showing up next to is a core of what the experience is for the consumer. And if you're not feeding that in and understanding context, again, you're not going to understand why and where someone engages. A place where there's premium content, they're reading because they want to be there, they may be more receptive than in a place where it's user-generated and the publisher can't really tell you what you're going to run next to. All right, so third question. Are you everywhere your consumers are? This is my duopoly buster slide. Ciaran and I were talking about this yesterday. There's this fake news in this industry. The fake news that video is over and Facebook and YouTube have won. And the fake news is driven by a integration of search revenue from Google with other kinds of revenue from Facebook in a US-centered way, looking at incremental dollars. It's a very, if an undergraduate did a paper that way for me at MIT, I would fail them. It's not even undergraduate level math. It doesn't even get close to graduate level math. If you look at the real data about where people spend their time on mobile devices, which is where everything is moving, you see that Facebook is about 18%, YouTube about 3%, and about 77% of where people spend their time, which is a proxy for where you can find them and reach them if you get to them in ways they'll engage, 77% is outside those two platforms. So I think it's really important not to get overly focused on any one publisher or platform, and in this context, Facebook and YouTube are publishers, but to optimize your machine learning on people, on individuals, not on ad units and not on publications. So that's the third principle. All right, I'm going to close and move to the fireside chat on what I promised, the Advertiser AI BSD. BSD, of course, is a TLA, which is a three-letter acronym. I had to throw a few buzzwords in here at the end. And it's a three-letter acronym for bullshit detector. So this is your AI bullshit detector. These are questions you can ask your ad tech vendor if they say, we've got machine learning, deep learning, or AI. Number one, what's the one thing you're best at optimizing for? And if their answer is whatever it is you need, your little bullshit flag should go off. Because remember, AI works well in narrow but deep and well-defined problems. It can't be everything to everyone. There's a reason Criteo, who does one thing, has done so well as a public company. They do one thing extremely well. Second, how will the context of my ad impact your machine learning? Ask that of your machine learning vendor. And if they say, what it means is probably there's no understanding of context in the learning. We all know we engage differently in different kinds of content, and we respond to advertising differently in different places, different devices, and different contexts. And finally, what are your proof points that your machine learning drives genuine engagement, consideration, or purchase? To your question, how do I know that this is moving business results in something I can measure and not simply media metrics? And finally, be very clear and very, very, very specific about your objective. And if those of you on the brand side and your agency partners can do that, you can leverage machine learning in a way that drives results that are 3, 4, 5, 6 times what you'll get without it. Thank you. I'm going to open it up now to fireside chat and Ciaran.
Thank you, Todd. That's clicker, yeah. Thank you. So I have a confession to make. In 2002, I actually invented AI. I'll tell you why. So when I was at college, I actually built a program called Dr. Ciaran Knows Best, right? And basically what it was is you would put your symptoms in, right, for a disease, and it would give you a diagnosis, right? And obviously a cure, right? Obviously, I only had the whole project was supposed to do like 20, 30 different diseases, right? I only got to do one. Can you guess what it was?
I hesitate to guess.
Irritable bowel syndrome. And obviously, given the heavy drinker I was, I only got to do one disease. So all the test subjects were getting, diagnosed for irritable bowel syndrome and actually getting here's how you treat it. Many people died in that test, but I'm glad to know I actually did invent AI. So this whole purpose of this conversation here is to talk about what's wrong with AI right now, right? Everybody in this room realizes this is the biggest bullshit bingo word in our industry right now, and there is a lot of companies pushing it around. So I'm just going to give you my sort of my bugbears with it. So let's just start here, right? Number one, the AI confusion. AI is the machine that keeps on learning in it, right? So this is this would be what do you call it, IO salesman going around to agencies to talk about IOs. I have a problem with this because this is lies, right? So how do we stop this type of confusion? There's a lot of agencies at the minute buying on a sort of an insertional basis, and there's a guy going around, he's selling the dream, but it's just not real. So how do you stop those agencies actually buying from that person and asking the right questions? Because there seems to be, look, I'm not dissing the idea of machine learning, right? I think it's very, very important for automating a lot of processes, particularly in ad tech. But the AI proposition is to use a better word, bastardized, if you can. Like, it's actually been taken and misused by a lot of companies. So what would your suggestion be there?
Yeah, I mean, I would use the three questions I threw in the talk. You know, what are you optimizing for, and what are you best in the world at optimizing for? Usually that will trigger a long, confusing answer about, well, what is it you need? And that's a big bullshit detector. I would look at how they're actually using where the ads appear, and if they don't actually have any understanding of context, they're missing something fundamental. And third, I'd ask them, how do you tie it to business metrics that matter and measure things that actually move the needle on business metrics and not bullshit metrics? I'll give you one example. You know, people will look at click-through rates as a measure. And you know, you can set a video ad player to click through no matter where someone clicks on the video. Most of those clicks are false clicks. They're trying to close it. They're trying to get rid of it. They're trying to turn the sound off. And if people are doing that, they're going to get very high click-through rates. That's a bullshit metric. You can test it by seeing, are they doing anything on the web page? Are they staying? Are they building and pricing the car? So business results, context, and making sure they're optimizing for the one thing they're good at.
Okay. The next one is AI chancers. I don't know if you know this story about, this is Paris Hilton, who's now in cahoots with Gorbash, our favorite ad tech villain. And they're setting up a whole AI-driven digital marketing and advertising services. And this is actually a Bitcoin launch, which is another great sort of buzzword in ad tech right now. So again, it's the industry is being populated by chancers, right? So is there a way for people to look at methodologies around the likes of AI, like around machine learning, go and asking specific questions about what are you using as your sort of core technology to make this work?
Yeah, I mean, the one question I would ask there, and I left that out of the talk, is how do you find nonlinear relationships between data? Because it's a bit of a technical question, but basically people are passing off linear regression and basic statistical modeling as AI. And so one of the big differences in AI techniques like neural networks is they can find relationships between data that aren't a straight line.
Right.
And if you're simply using basic statistics, it has nothing to do with AI or machine learning or deep learning. It has to do with math. And the other thing, you know, I have a little poster at my desk that says, if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it. That certainly does not pass that test. So if they can't speak English without buzzwords and tell you why they're going to give you better business results and prove it, it's bullshit.
A utility token that allows cryptocurrency-enabled purchasing of targeted, AI-driven digital marketing and advertising services. Did you ever hear such bullshit in your entire life, eh?
It's definitely top 10.
Yeah. So obviously the other one is the AI concern. This is a future speaker at ATS London 2027. This is obviously Wally, and now he's moved into ad tech. So obviously there was a lot of concern around the jobs in the industry, talking about automation. Does that mean that most of the media planners go away? Does that mean a lot of optimization, ad ops people go away? Or are we just seeing an evolution of our industry where this technology becomes part and parcel, but new roles start to pop up? Effectively, like creative destruction creates jobs as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's actually debate about this question as to whether we're entering a period of stagnation or a period of growth when it comes to jobs. And you know, if history is any guide, new technologies destroy jobs. but the disruption also creates new jobs. What's happened now for the first time, and my colleagues at MIT call it the great decoupling. There's actually a decoupling between job creation and GDP economic growth. So there is actually more destruction of jobs going on than there is new job creation. The question is, how does that problem get solved? From a societal perspective, it's about things like education. From an individual perspective, if you're in the media business, you should learn to do man-machine integration. In other words, don't fear the machine, work with the machine. Your job is going to change. Your job is going to require more digital savvy. Your job is going to require more understanding of, yes, indeed, things like mathematics. But there are going to be really, really interesting jobs in this field as you apply human creativity along with machine pattern recognition. My favorite example, if I could give 10 more seconds, is we're going to have self-driving cars. They're coming. And it's probably 10, 15 years before they're ubiquitous on the roads, but they're on the roads already. There's 1 million truck drivers in the US alone. So there will be job displacements from AI technologies. The question is, how do we replace them? And the answer is education and continuous learning.
And maybe, I mean, the new positions like servicing that, the whole sort of AI-powered truck fleet, and then obviously data around that as well. So there's going to be whole new jobs around that. So you think that the industry has to have to evolve around the technology effectively, but a lot of automated tasks or a lot of manual tasks can be automated.
Manual tasks and increasingly low-level knowledge work tasks. So if your job is redundant, repetitive, and you feel like after about 3 or 4 months you're doing the same thing every day, ding, 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 ding.
Sounds like my daily routine.
But if you're creative, if you're finding new patterns, if you're give my data example before about Fenway Park. The machine will not learn what data it needs that it doesn't have. You will have insight into what's really driving people's behavior. And the reality is, this whole advertising technology market needs to be completely turned on its head. We start with this notion that we can build perfect persona models for what a brand needs, and then go target those persona models. And that's a legacy of the television age, where we had to decide which program to advertise on to reach our target persona. None of us are personas. We're individuals. And the new wave in advertising and marketing is figuring out how to connect with individuals, which means understanding how they engage, how they buy, and what they care about. That's a new frontier. For video, I can certainly speak to that space. We're in inning 2 of a 9-inning ball game, or perhaps the first cucumber sandwich of a 4-day cricket match. I'm not sure.
I don't know what that means.
But we're really at the beginning of it.
All right, Tod's available to talk about machine learning for most of the day, so thanks very much, Tod. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.